I'm so excited to be here. Thank you guys for sticking around to hear this important conversation. Thank you all for joining this. It's such a crucial topic. There's been a ton of conversation so far today about artificial intelligence. We're going to kind of bring it home through the lens of content provenance. You could argue that our industry, our entire business is built on sort of a trust bond between three parties, right? Advertiser, consumer, and publisher, or platform in some cases. And like digital in general has been sort of eroding that trust for a long time. And now AI threatens to erode that trust even further. And I think it's a really complex and nuanced issue to understand. What does that mean from a consumer trust perspective? What does that mean from an advertiser trust perspective? What does that mean from a publisher trust perspective? And we're going to dive into that throughout the rest of this conversation. It's a really, like I said, it's a really complex and nuanced issue. We're not going to solve the whole thing in 20 minutes that we have here today, but we'll kind of outline some of the key challenges and some solutions that I think we have sketched out. The last thing I'll say before we dive into the conversation is the Forays actually published a guide to this whole concept earlier this year in January called the Guide to Content Provenance. You can scan the QR code there or check it out on our AI Hub. It's a great piece of content that'll just kind of give you a better, deeper introduction into what we're going to talk about today. So I'm fortunate to be sort of joined by multiple perspectives from across the ecosystem. So I'll just let you guys really quickly introduce yourselves in addition to what Ash said. Go ahead, Nada.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nada Bradbury, CEO of AdID. AdID is an ad creative registry that you register your ad creatives with. It provides what we like to akin to a UPC code and associated metadata so that you can track the travel of the ad creative throughout the ecosystem and understand frequency capping, ad management, measurement on the back end, and the benefits go on. But we're very, very closely tied into C2PA and how we fit into that puzzle to help solve the issues that AI and other efficiencies are bringing to the marketplace.
Tony Katsur, CEO of the IAB Tech Lab. Apparently, you should all get to know me.
We already do.
The IAB Tech Lab is the global technical standard setting body for the industry. Our remit is truly global. If you are familiar with standards like RTB, VAST, ads.txt, sellers.json, the TCF, which governs privacy consent in Europe, those are all IAB Tech Lab products. We have over 1,100 members globally, 1,100 member companies globally, and we have just started our journey into looking how we can incorporate C2PA into the ecosystem, into our technical standards, into our open source solutions that are free for the industry. So yeah, and I'm delighted to be here with Jeremy. Thank you, Ashwini and the Forays. Thank you for having the Tech Lab here today.
Thanks, Tony. Ray.
Hi, everybody. Ray Lansigan. I'm here in two capacities. So I'm an EVP at Publicis Groupe, where I have a remit of strategy and innovation for our digital businesses. And I also hold our C2PA steering committee seat, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that is, where I've been driving a lot of the outreach to the ad industry and taking a technical standard that was designed for the open web and driving adoption into the advertising industry.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys. So, Ray, you started to touch on C2PA. Tony touched on it as well. Can you just describe that a little bit more in detail? Like, what is it? Why is it important?
So let me just give you the quick rundown on the C2PA. So the C2PA stands for the Coalition for Content Provenance and Authentication. It's a coalition of big tech companies, publishers, advertising industries, different stakeholders across the digital value chain that recognized that there was a need to authenticate content provenance. Content provenance is simply the origins of where a piece of content came from. That content could be a static image, it could be a video, it could be voice. And if you think about the age of AI, where there's a lot of different ways to manipulate or alter different pieces of content, knowing where something was captured, how it was captured, and how it was edited across time becomes really important. So that's the C2PA. Like I said, it's a coalition, and the critical thing is that we publish a standard that's under ISO certification as we speak. And that standard is called Content Credentials. And you can look for a CR pin that looks very much like this. You'll see it start to pop up in different platforms, in different applications, and that will provide you the ability to inspect a manifest that tells you all of the provenance information that I just went through.
Awesome. So it's a technical standard that allows people to attach metadata to a digital asset at the end of the day, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Very well said.
Did I summarize that okay? Yeah. Yours was much deeper, but that just for dumb people like me, that's a good way to say it. So I think part of the challenge with this whole thing is like the C2PA has established this fantastic standard that allows that attachment of metadata to the asset, but they're not defining what is that metadata on an industry level, right? They've kind of left that to whatever industry it is that's adopting the standard. And so that falls, to us in the advertising world to figure out like what are those pieces of metadata that we should attach to the standard, and what is important from a use case perspective for consumers. So I guess, Nada, for you, like as you think about, we've got this technical standard in C2PA. Ad ID has been a key player in sort of verification and digital asset identification. Like, how do you see C2PA kind of weaving into that ecosystem for you?
Yeah, look, for us, we see it clearly as an extension to what we've been doing for over 20 years, right? It's just becoming more important today. So if you go back 20 years and you think about advertising creatives and how many there weren't a lot. So it was easy to track things. But the foundation that we built that creates a unique ID with each unique ad creative, the metadata that's associated to it, the process of appending it to a creative, having it travel throughout the ecosystem, applies perfectly to C2PA. And with the advent of AI and everything we've been talking about today, which is how do I make my life easier? How do I do things quicker? How can I do more creatives in less time? Really showcases the need to be able to understand what is the provenance of that advertising creative. What variation of the original ad is it? Is it fraud? Is it, what is happening out there? And the way to do it is to utilize an ad ID within C2PA that allows you to understand what the brand is, what the vehicle is for the delivery, how long was the ad, was it print, was it audio, was it digital, whatever it is, along with what we feel would be a new metadata source, which would say, is this AI generated? What version is this? What other components need to be associated for the provenance of that particular ad creative? And we're excited to be at the beginning of this. I think one of the things that Ray didn't mention is C2PA has been around for 4 years now. They've done a great job around content. They're just starting on advertising creative. So for everybody in this room, this is the time to get involved now, to understand what's happening, and really to be able to drive the solutions in the marketplace.
Yep. And Tony, from the IAB perspective, you guys obviously have been setting the standard for programmatic delivery and infrastructure for a long time. Like, how do you think about this coming into that ecosystem?
Well, I think in the age of AI, it's, there's tons of promise with AI in terms of societal change and improving everyone's lives, both personally and professionally. I think that, some of the downsides or the darker sides of AI are, again, revolve around content authenticity. And that content can be in the form of ad creative or it can be in the form of actual content produced by a media organization. The beauty of C2PA is the fact that it allows that authentication of that, to determine, like, is that really a video of President Trump? Is that really a video of, Prime Minister of Germany, right? So that authentication is key so people know the information they're hearing is valid. In terms of how we incorporate it, that's something that we're just started exploring at the Tech Lab. We became charter members last November of C2PA, and we're looking at how we incorporate that signaling into everything from ad creative to content. There may be even usage for around C2PA around things like privacy compliance. There may be anti-fraud mechanisms we could also incorporate from a C2PA perspective. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to explore this. It's just we're early days at the Tech Lab. I think we're going to spend the balance of this year figuring out exactly how we integrate it into the advertising and media ecosystem.
Yeah, and Ray, I want to come back to you just from the client perspective. Like, what are you hearing from clients, and like, is this an important issue for them, and how are you tooling up to address?
Yeah, great question. So The answer is yes, and there's two reasons. There's sort of the direct reason, and then there's an indirect reason. So the direct reason is in terms of protection of brand marks and their intangible assets. So if you look at the value of the world's top 100 brands, there's something like $4 trillion in brand value. And that's a result of what everyone in this room does in terms of building that brand equity. And those brands can be duped. They can be hijacked, and we've seen what the implications of that could be. There was the famous example of Eli Lilly and a fake post about the price of insulin that tanked the stock price. So in examples like that, we see clients very interested in protecting the value of the brands that they have worked so hard to build. That's the direct piece. The indirect piece is more of an existential component of the digital ecosystem. And so, there's $1 trillion that flows through advertising. Most of that is digital. Again, a lot of the people, everyone in this room is, responsible for some of those dollars. And, we talk a lot about brand safety. We talk a lot about following the eyeballs and wanting to be in places where consumers trust the content that they're consuming. And so when I talk to the platforms of the world, things of that nature, the conversation is very much about ensuring the authenticity and the integrity of those spaces. And so what I've seen is that brand advertisers want to safeguard the places where they're advertising and showing up for the long term as well.
So the next question that I have then is totally get the need to protect brand assets and brand marks and all of that, and to ensure that, if it's Nike distributing an ad, that I can, as a consumer, I can verify that this is actually coming from Nike, for example, or even from a content perspective, that this is coming from BBC or CNN or whatever. But for me anyway, part of the impetus behind a lot of this was pending regulation around AI disclosure, like the need to tell a consumer that I've used AI to create a particular asset. And at least until the current administration came into office, a lot of that was coming from the perspective that all AI usage is bad, right? And it begs the question to me, if I have no intent to deceive or mislead a consumer, should AI disclosure just be covered by existing truth in advertising regulations, or do we need something in addition to that? I'd love to hear all of your perspectives on that. Nana, I want to start with you.
Yeah, look, my perspective is I think it's broader than AI. I think it's important that we know the provenance of content or advertising, where it's coming from, and how it's being utilized throughout the ecosystem. I'm of the belief that if we waited for the government to tell us what to do, I don't know that we get much done all the time. So we have the opportunity here to take the bull by the horns and protect our investments that we're making, whether it's investing as an advertiser or as a publisher, that we understand what is going out in the marketplace, what's being utilized, what's being seen, and most importantly, what's having an impact. Because I think Provenance also has a large impact on what ad worked and what didn't. And was it AI driven that was positive for my particular brand, or was it something else, or was it a combination thereof? So there are many more use cases around this rather than just protecting against fraud and other components. That's my opinion. And I think if we have the opportunity right now in front of us to take action on it, we should. I don't see a downside.
Yep.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's greater telemetry that something like C2PA can produce for both media companies, advertisers, and their agency partners than just combating fraud or ensuring content authenticity. C2PA does have an opportunity to become almost like this bedrock token embedded in content, again, whether it's an ad or actual content itself. And once you actually have that pervades an industry, there's a lot you can build on top of that once it's distributed through the industry. So I think, this isn't just necessarily either getting ahead of government regulation. I totally agree. If we wait for the government to tell us what to do, we'll be here for years. This is more than just getting ahead of any sort of regulatory environment. This could establish new best practices for the industry that could also kind of undemonize some of the elements of like programmatic buying. Again, there's anti-fraud opportunities here. So I think there's a lot more you can do at C2PA than just complying with a government regulation.
Yeah, and what I'd add is that we're meeting a need, right? So there's a clear need among the content creator community about content provenance, right? And so that was a swath of the origin story of the C2PA and content credentials. And so, given that content creation is a large part of our business, I think we need to be responsive to that particular, to those requirements. I think we're going to start to see as well that consumers are going to put requirements and expectations on us from a content provenance perspective. And the last thing that I'd say, Nada mentioned, downside, that there really is no downside, right? The technical standard has been built, it's available, and you can pull it into your workflows. And it's negligible in terms of time, it's negligible in terms of asset weight, and it's pretty easy to do. So it's just kind of the will and the desire to pull it through.
So you guys both, Ray and Nada, touched on sort of there's no downside here, but let me flip that question kind of on its head for a second, which is to say, what are the risks? Like if we don't get after this as an industry, like what are we putting at risk?
Well, I think billions of dollars in advertising, trillions. I mean, it's our opportunity to be able to rein in the explosive growth that's happening right now of understanding what's in front of us and what's flowing through the ecosystem. If we don't take advantage of it now, I think it's going to be really hard to rein folks in and say, there are standards now, and this is what you need to do so that I am confident of the provenance of this, so that I am confident in the measurement on the back end of my advertising investment, so that I am confident that there isn't fraud. That's the biggest risk. I don't know that you could rein it back in at that point.
And I just think, to Ray's point, like consumers, are probably in the early days of already starting to, demand isn't quite the word, but they're in a world where we are awash in misinformation and disinformation. Content authenticity, integrity is absolutely critical because it's only going to get more complex, more fragmented as the internet continues to grow. And I think we do have a responsibility to ensure that we are putting authentic content and we're advertising next to authentic content in front of consumers.
I'd add that, we talk a lot about personalization and versioning assets into audiences of one. And so as you get to those atomic level units, right, as a consumer, I'd want to know that the brand is actually behind that atomic unit and somewhere in the value chain, it wasn't hijacked or duped or something of that nature. So I see a big opportunity in personalization as well.
Yeah. And a real use case is this happens quite a bit in the UK. There's a fair amount of spyware and malware where people are duping actual brands and getting folks to click on what would appear to be a legitimate brand advertisement when in fact it's not, and it's leading you to some spyware or malware site. And this is why we work with IB UK, and we've created this concept called the gold standard, and we've created other technical specifications to help flag those things and mitigate those issues. C2PA could be a really good arrow in the quiver to fight those kind of issues. Like that happens in the UK quite frequently.
All right, we've got 1 minute left before we turn it over to audience questions. So I guess my last question for you guys is, if you could leave the audience with one takeaway from our discussion today, what would that be?
I think it's table stakes moving forward. We all need to be held accountable to what we're putting out in the marketplace. So it's an easy win for everybody.
I would go to the C2PA website. I would read up on C2PA and the problems that it could solve. I would think about use cases where you think authenticating content and ensuring content integrity is important to not only your clients but also consumers. So I would head to the C2PA website and just do a quick read up. over a glass of wine or whiskey on a Friday night, get a fire going. Yeah.
There's a
fascinating.
very engaging technical explainer to accompany that glass of wine. But on that website, you'll find the spec. It's open source and it's free, so you can pull it down and use it. You can also access it through our community initiative, which is called the Content Authenticity Initiative. They'll provide support, an SDK. There's some private market solutions as well. So, adopt content credentials into your workflow.
Amazing. Thank you, guys. We'll
you.
turn it over to questions.
I'm going to start with one for Tony. Tony, you mentioned some of the different standards that you all have been involved in. Could you talk about that process a little bit? Like, how can folks in the room help? Where do some of these things start? How do people get involved in something like this, making it through to a standard?
Sure. So the best way to get involved is become a Tech Lab member. If you're based in the US, the way you become a member of the Tech Lab is you join the IB US, and then you get Tech Lab membership as part of your IB US membership. If you are not based in the US, you can join the Tech Lab directly. I got a little side deal with the IB. They've reimbursed me for all the members that join Tech Lab through IB US. So those are two ways. So if you're a member of the Tech Lab, either through IB US or if you're a member of the Tech Lab directly, if you're based outside of the US, our working groups are open to all members. If you're not a member of the working group or if you're not a member of Tech Lab, all of our standards and our frameworks are free for the industry to use, members or not. They are all posted. We believe in open transparency, open standards. We do not develop these standards behind closed doors. They're done with the industry. Some of our working groups consist of as many as 200 people in a single meeting. So you can access all of that. You can access all of those standards at ibtechlab.com. And if you want to join, just ping us at ibtechlab at membership at ibtechlab.com and you can join.
This is meant to be a consumer-facing solution, I think, ultimately. I know it's early days, specifically within our industry. It's been around for 4 years, but newer to us. Has there been any research or any testing that's been done to kind of say, like, how often would a consumer actually click on the pin, and take a look at what's in there? Or maybe that hasn't been done yet.
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's a B2B component to it. So the standard is machine readable, and some of our members like Meta, Google, TikTok are in the process of, some actually already have this live, where they can ingest the content credential standard and then display it, right? So in that case, they're doing the work on behalf of the consumers and have short-circuited the process. What we're seeing in terms of the initial research is that consumers and users see a high risk of content at risk of manipulation. The number is something like 80% globally, with a little bit of variation across most of the developed markets. So I think the need and the recognition of the problem is already there. What I need to work on with my C2PA hat is the education and awareness of what the solution is.
Okay, last question. I think one, we didn't talk too much about it, maybe on the publisher side. I think we think of ads as content. They're thinking of the content that they're writing, the journalism that's there, the photographs that they have. How is the publisher side of it kind of leaning into this? Are they as interested as we are? Are they looking at it for some of the same reasons? Are they part of some of those working groups?
So it's an interesting question, and so the answer is yes, they're interested. What I've seen is that the publishers are pretty well developed on the news and the content side of the house, and that's starting to trickle into the ad side of the house. So I actually learned from Nada this morning that some of the biggest platforms like Google, among others, have started to mobilize the C2PA through their ads business. And I was very pleasantly surprised to hear that. But in short, the answer is yes, there's a broad recognition of the importance of this.
And publishers are also looking at it from just from some IP protection perspectives as well, right? If you have C2PA embedded in your content, it makes it hard for others to steal your content.
Absolutely. Well, you heard them. Go check it out. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.